Mohammad Athar Javed is the Director General at Pakistan House, the think tank of international affairs. He joins us now from Copenhagen. Good to have you on with us. What do you know about these phosphorus munitions and how they're used in warfare?
Thank you very much. As you mentioned very rightfully, that it can be used, but in the civilian areas where there is non-combatants, as we call them, then it will amount to war crimes, international against the Geneva Convention. But we all should remember that the first casualty in all kind of conflicts, war, is the truth. We have no verification, and there is not at all proof provided. I think Mr. Zelensky was speaking in Hague. Of course, it has a OPCW headquarter, and we also know that Russia is a signatory of the CWC, this Chemical Weapons Convention. So I think we should be very cautious too, because it's an allegation which has raised at a time when significantly, it affects his trip and his articulation as he's on trip to garner support for his country. On the other hand, if we look into the previous history of this allegation of WMD, we have seen in Iraq by the United States and other allied country, NATO members. Also, we faced this kind of challenge when the intelligence was faulted, and when it came to the light, and in the end it was proven, and it is proven that no WMD found there. So I would rather even think these videos have really I can't see, I have seen these clips. It doesn't really categorically has an evidence of Russia using phosphorus in the civilian areas. On the other hand, you mentioned about the military strategically very important. As a student of military strategy, I would rather be wondering that why would at this stage, when Russia and Ukraine is in the prolonged conflict, and it appears that it won't end, its end will not be soon in sight, why Russia would using phosphorus, in the civilian, because there are many Russians also living there, Russian speakers living there in Ukraine. So I think this is my submission would be that it must be very cautious when allegations are made of this level. And of course, it's amount to more rhetoric, factual statements, and evidence is still missing.
As you mentioned, and as our report mentioned as well, these weapons are not banned, but their use in civilian areas is considered a war crime. Why not ban the use of these weapons?
Yeah, it's technically it's very good, but then when it comes to the operational capacity of a military, it depends on what kind of military is in opposition. One has to soften the targets, but then, as you mentioned, why not to ban it completely? Then it's impossible to ban. There are many weapons, other weapon systems, and other bombs. We can say that there had been allegations against the major powers using depleted uranium in different war zones in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in many places. So I think we cannot really limit it, but of course, where the non-combatants are, where the civilians are, I think it is important that this material using those bombs should not be used. But as I said, that the first casualty of war or conflict is always the truth. The propaganda warfare wins in the end, because then it directs a narrative, a national narrative, in a way in which, whenever it is required, it's also the placement. When this report came, and when Mr. Zelensky has been in The Hague, we ought to also understand the significance, the linkages between the news coming now, and then, of course, as your report says, that in March as well, this year March, there was an allegation as well, but of course it's never proven. So my point will remain that we can't really ban in a warfare. You have to use weapons of choice, but then if it is at the industrial scale, it has a civilian, I would say, the damages to the non-combatant, of course, it should be banned.
So I appreciate you mentioning the propaganda warfare and the timing of this announcement. And We don't even really know if this is true about these weapons being used by Russia in Bakhmut, but we do know that there are practically no civilians left in Bakhmut. Would the use of this weapon there still even be considered illegal, given that?
Yeah, because they are trying to project it's an urban area. Effect of that would be that if there is to be mounted any report or something, they would like to say that there were civilians, and because there are no civilian left, as you said, because of a very heavy fighting in Bakhmut area for the past several months. I think it is also important, as you said, still when you have a civilian addresses, when it's an urban area, when there are even hospital, we don't know as I said, as you said very right, we have no evidence or clue whether this is true. But as far as the city's urban setting is concerned, if it's being attacked and use material in that, it can amount to that. But then the fact finding missions or whatever, if there is an evidence, because as we know there is no evidence of it at all. So I would say it is still looks to me very bleak, and it's not plausible for me to see that if there were no civilian left, even it will be considered, it will amount to that why the phosphorus was used in the civilian areas. But as we both saying that we have no evidence of that, there is no evidence. So I would say rather that it is also not in the interest of any military strategy when the war is prolonged, when there are conventional weapons are being used, when the heightened tension between the international powers, United States, Russia, and China, and all other countries, NATO members, and when there is a deployment, redeployment of this different strategic weapons are in process, I think using chemical weapons by any professional military would definitely would not be considered as a right military strategy. That's why I said that since we have no clue and we cannot really say that it was used.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Some really great information. I appreciate your time. Mohammad Athar Javed joining us from Copenhagen. Thank you so much.